Dear Lord, thank you so much for this night. Thank you for the people that are here and those that are not. God, I pray especially for those who are sick tonight. Mr. Corey and Luke are two that I know of for sure, but others as well, Lord. And so I pray that you would just heal their bodies, Lord, and help them to get better. God, we know that you are the healer, and so we just thank you for that and pray that you would be with those who are sick and with those who are also well, that we could stay well, Lord. And so we just praise you that we were able to be here tonight and to hear a word from you. So we love you and thank you. In your name we pray. Amen.
All right, you ready? All right. So have you ever loved somebody or something so much that you don't know what you would do without them or without it? Like, so if it's something, it would be an it, right? Or if it's someone, it would be who, right? So just clarifying that. We know so what does somebody in the Bible also knows what this feels like as well, right? And so we're talking about loss. So what happens, have you ever, let's raise your hand. Have you ever felt like you would never live without losing somebody in your life, right? Like grandma, grandpa, mom, dad. Like, have you ever had somebody in your life that's just like, I don't know if I could live without them. Like, they're really important to me. Those of you who don't raise your hand, you're lying. Like, I promise you. If you lost your mom or dad, you'd be bawling on the floor right now, right? I would raise my hand. There's been several times I've felt that way. So, for us, at least, so over here, just so that I'm keeping up with where I'm at. You got it, man? You got it?
No, you
All right. So with that, we have a story of that as well, right? So, with us, it was, to keep me straight on the dates, it was 2018, right? And so, since we got married in 2017, I got that right, I know I did. Kids are always on your mind when you're married, and so you're kind of like, when do we want to have kids, when we not? So it comes around 2018, we were excited, we kind of wanted to have kids. We ended up getting pregnant in 2018, in February when we knew it, or when, before that? Yeah, so February we knew it, and then we were like excited about it, right? So we figured it out. We had that child for 6 weeks, 3 days, and we lost that child. And so that really, really hit me hard, right? And so this is at least my half of this part of the story, right? And so in thinking very quickly, just sharing a brief part of it, I was working as a pest control guy at this time, so I had a lot of time in the car by myself. But for me, I wrestled with God a lot. I asked God why, and so this is the Why God series. And this was a very hard time for me when I was like, so if we believe that life happens at conception, right? So this is a hot time when abortion was really, really big. It still is. But I'm just saying, like, then it was like everybody in the Baptist community was like talking about it. I'm like, Lord, I feel so very convicted about like life happens at conception, and I know it for a fact. And so I couldn't justify in my human mind why, if we knew that life happened at conception, why would God take that child from us, right? And so we lost the child, and I'm like, dude, I just don't understand. Like, what's your purpose in this? Like, why do you have to take an unborn child from somebody who wants the child, right? We wanted this child, and we would take care of that child. And when there's other people in the world who have children so easily, right? There's people in high school getting pregnant out of wedlock very easily, and you're just like, so this kid is gonna have a hard life with this single parent, and probably don't even want the kid, and people are aborting them, and we want a child, and we've lost it. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And so I wrestled a lot with God in that part, at least.
Yeah, it was really tough because for me, like, the only thing I've ever wanted to be since I was a little tiny girl, and maybe some of y'all are like this in here, but I just always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And I always joke that, like, my life verse, like, go therefore, multiply, repopulate the earth from Genesis. It's a joke, but I really wanted to beat the Duggars by one, so I was like, we've been married, like, let's go ahead and get started here. So I was so excited when we got pregnant, and then I always had a fear that we, like, just wouldn't be able to get pregnant. I never thought that we would, like, lose this child, and so it's a little different, I think, being, like, the person who's carrying the baby, but we won't get into that. But I was really sad when the first child died, but I knew that I needed to lean on the Lord. And so I really just went to him and asked him these questions and wrestled with him. And I was like, oh, there's just got to be a reason. Because I'm really good at being, like, telling the Lord what we're going to do. And I'm like, okay, God, so, like, we're going to have this baby and we're going to, like, raise it up to be a disciple for you. Like, right, God? Like, I'm really good at planning my life and then asking the Lord, like, right? Like, that's what we're going to do, right? But the Lord knows so much more than I do. So we very quickly, we lost the baby in March and then ended up getting pregnant, like, a month or two later. And so we were like, okay. And I'm like, okay, we've, like, learned our lesson. And, like, we lost the baby. It was really, really, really hard. But, like, I, like, knew for sure, like, this one was gonna, like, cooperate. And so we, like, went and we just prayed really hard that we would be able to see a heartbeat with this baby, because that was gonna be, like, the sure sign to me that, like, this baby is gonna make it. And so I had, like, a whole lot of hope. And so we, like, went for our first appointment, and the same thing happened with the first one, where they were like, we're not really sure yet, the baby's not measuring as big, so come back in 2 weeks. And that's a long time when you're waiting on something like that. Like, if you've ever waited for, like, a test result or something, or, like, you even take a test. Like, when I was little, like, when I was in school, I'd take a test and be, like, refreshing the page to see my grade. Frank didn't do that. He didn't check his grades, but I did that. But anyways, I felt like that. I was like, 2 weeks, okay. So then we went back, and it was the morning before we left for summer camp. So this was in, like, the first week of June or something. And so I was like, we had been praying so hard and had all these people praying for us that we would see a heartbeat. So we went in, had the ultrasound, we saw a heartbeat, and I was, like, so excited. And we were like, okay, this is for sure, like gonna happen, sorry. And so we went and drove to summer camp, which took, like, 5 hours. And then within 24 hours after we got there, I lost the baby at summer camp. And so Frank and I were the only, like, chaperones, and I was like, why am I here serving these girls and now I have to leave them to, like, go to the doctor and they don't have anybody? And I felt so guilty for, like, having to leave them and just having to deal with that. And I was like, God, like, I thought this was gonna be, like, exactly what you wanted. Like, we already, learned our lesson, we've been there, did that. I did not expect that it would happen for the second time. And so it kind of sent me into this whirlwind of, like, why would this happen? Why would it happen twice? It happened on the exact same day each time, like, of the state in our pregnancy. And so I just did not understand, like, why would we see a heartbeat and 24 hours later, like, why? Like, what happened? And so it was just very hard for me. And that time, like, with the second baby, I took it really, really hard and just really, like, had nothing else to lean on. And so, are we talking about, we're gonna go to the end and talk about, like, what we learned from it? Or do you want me to just, like...
No, you can talk about how you reacted to it.
Okay. So, with the first one, like, I felt like I needed to be really strong because I knew Frank was struggling with it, and the Lord does such this, like, beautiful thing where he allowed Frank and I to respond almost opposite each time so that we could be strong for the other person. But this time I just really felt like I had nothing left and I had to just solely depend on the Lord. And so sometimes I think when, like, this was, like, my greatest desire to be a mom, and so I really felt that, like, was being stripped and taken from me. And so I felt like I had really nothing else to lean on, like, not even Frank. Like, yes, I could lean on him, but I really had to go to the Lord. And so we wrestled hard. Like, I met with him every morning, the Lord, at, like, 4:30 before I would go teach school, and we just, like, sat together for a long time and worked through things. And so I really feel so strongly that was the hardest time in my life, but I can honestly say that is the time I felt the closest to the Lord. And I learned so much about the character of God by walking with him through those times and not knowing if we would ever be able to get pregnant again, because then we didn't get pregnant for, like, 7 more months. And so then it was like, what, like, are we ever gonna be able to have a child? Like, I really had to wrestle with all of these thoughts, and so all these whys just came into my mind. And so we really had to deal with that type of suffering and loss.
Yeah, and so there's somebody else in the Bible, obviously, that has suffered in a way that's maybe not quite similar exactly, but I think it kind of can parallel very easily. So we're reading Job. So if you have your Bible, open it.
Everybody needs Bible.
Because we just did that.
So we're going to read what happened to Job, just to kind of hear his story, but also you'll kind of hear similar things. It's chapter 1. Sorry. So it's Job chapter 1, verse 13. Yeah.
Okay, so quick preface for context while y'all are getting there. So there was a land of Uz, is what it's called, not Oz, but Uz. And Job was a man that lived there and had all of these things. He was considered one of the wealthiest in the land, and he was considered blameless and upright. And basically, the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" He's like, "Dude, Jesus," this is Bethlehem paraphrase. "Dude, God, I've been roaming the earth, and I've been like looking around for all these people, and he's like, I've just been going to see like what's going on, you know." And Jesus was like, "Is it Jesus or God?" They're the same person, but God says, I don't want to get that wrong, sorry. "Have you considered my servant Job?" And then they get to talking, and he's like, "Well, I bet," Satan's like, "Well, Jesus, I bet I bet if I take everything away from him that he will curse your name and that he will not be blameless and upright anymore." And Jesus is like, God says, sorry. I just want to say Jesus. God says, go at it, but you can't touch Job, right? He's like, go ahead, go at it, Satan, but you can't touch Job.
That's right.
So,
Can't kill Job.
can't kill him.
Yeah, that's right.
So here we go.
So in verse 13 it says, "One day Job's sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine together in the oldest brother's house. A messenger came to Job and said, 'The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were eating the grass nearby when the Sabians attacked and carried them away. They killed the servants with swords, and I am the only one who escaped to tell you,'" right? So all of his oxen and donkeys and even some servants had died. And so the messenger was still speaking when another messenger arrived and said, "Lightning from God fell from the sky. It burned up the sheep and the servants, and I am the only one who escaped to tell you," right? And so now he's lost oxen, donkeys, sheep, and all the servants that were helping all that. And so as that second servant is still talking, another messenger arrived and said, the Babylonians sent 3 groups of attackers that swept down and stole your camels and killed the servants. I'm the only one who escaped to tell you." Okay, so now we've lost camels as well. And while the third messenger was still speaking, another, so this is the 4th messenger now. This is getting crazy, right? Arrived and said, "Your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine together at the oldest brother's house. Suddenly a great wind came from the desert, hitting all 4 corners of the house at once. And the house fell on the young people, and they are all dead. I am the only one who escaped to tell you." Then Job heard this. He got up, tore his robe, and shaved his head to show how sad he was. And then he bowed down to the ground to worship God, and he said, "I was naked when I was born, and I will be naked when I die. The Lord gave me these things, and he has taken them away. Praise the name of the Lord." In all this, Job did not sin or blame God. Right? And so, to me at least, I feel like our story is we've lost something we loved, right? We lost something. I don't want to minimize that, but at the same time, when I'm reading this, like, all at once, like, Job is like this dude who's got it all. He's got all these donkeys, oxen, sheep, camels, servants, and a full family, right? Like, these are sons and daughters that he's got. And one after another, like, verse after verse, one messenger came, and while he was still talking about what he lost, another messenger came and told him what he lost. Another messenger came. He literally went from hero to zero, it sounds like, in a matter of
A few minutes.
2 verses, right?
Yeah.
And so, even in this, Job praises the Lord. When I was naked when I was born, so I came in this world with nothing, and I will leave with nothing, basically. And the Lord gave these things to me, right? And he's taken them away. So praise the name of the Lord. And still, even in verse 22, it says, in all of this, in the fact that he lost pretty much everything, he did not sin or blame God, right? And so he immediately reacted well, right? I mean, he was mourning. He was obviously sad. He stripped himself, tore off his cloak and shaved his head to show how sad he was. And as we continue on, we see how sad he was. But he didn't blame the Lord, right?
Yeah, like he didn't even have time to process all the things, because someone else just keeps going, oh yeah, and your oxen, and your cat, like that he doesn't even have time to finish a sentence and process that when the next person's like, and by the way, this too, and this too. And so, we just want y'all to know that, like, when you are, like, when you've asked the Lord to lead your life, like, he doesn't promise that things are gonna be easy, and that you're never gonna suffer, and that you're never going to experience loss. Like, the Lord does not say that anywhere in the Bible. And so we see that with Job, that he lost things that were important to him. Some of those cattle things, I'm sure, like, kind of how he, like, made a living in a way, and needed those people to help deal with all those animals and all of that. And so these things were very important to him. They're like how he lived, and so he lost all of that. And so he questioned God, I'm sure, like, why is this happening, and everything in one day. But yet at the same time, he understood that it was, like, in the Lord's will, and that God had his best in mind, because he said, like, these things all belong to the Lord anyway. He's just a steward of them, and if the Lord chooses to take those things away, then so be it, and that he will praise and bless the name of the Lord. And so how hard would that be? Like, just think about if you lost all of your pets and all of your, like, I don't know, family members, or all of your, like, talents, or just anything you feel like all of it was stripped away from you, and you choose in that moment just to bless the Lord. And so we, you're doing that, I'm sorry.
No, you got it.
Just that we get to choose how we respond to things that happen to us, right? So we'll see in a few minutes how the wife responded, but Job really responded with praising the Lord amidst all these troubles and all these things being taken away from him. And so when you come upon trials and tribulations, like, you get to choose if you want to bless the name of the Lord, or if you want to
Curse it.
Yeah.
I think that's really, if there were a blank, that would be the blank, right? We choose how we respond to things that happen to us. Just like I chose how to respond to the loss of the first child with, like, I was angry, like, just to be completely honest with you, like, while I was doing volunteer ministry at the time, I was still angry. Like, I probably didn't let anyone see it because I was in the car doing pest control and all that kind of stuff, but, like, man, there'll be a time in your life, and if it's not right now, or you haven't already been through it, where you can somewhat get angry with the Lord, and you're just like, what are you, like, it's almost as if, this is me and my humanly self, right? You're sitting there going, what in the world are you doing, Lord? Like, do you understand do you know how to do this thing, right? Did you mess up? It's very easy to, in our human minds even, to question God in those ways, and I don't think those are necessarily bad. I think that God has that relationship with us, and he wants us to talk to him, and he wants us to wrestle with him, right? He wants us to get so, he wants that thing to grow us, to mold us, to shape us, but ultimately it's going to probably teach us something, right? So I kind of jumped the gun with that answer, but it ultimately, when things happen to us, we choose how we respond to them out of anger, out of completely turning from the Lord. Like, I've seen plenty of people respond to things like they lose a brother, a sister, a parent even, and they just leave. Like, they're like, dude, out. Like, I don't believe in this God. A God wouldn't do that to me. You know, I've heard that plenty of times growing up. I'm sure you hear it every day too, right? I don't know a God that would, if your God is so loving, why did he take so-and-so from me? Like, that's not loving at all, right? And that's very easy for us to just, quote unquote, get in our feels, right? Like, we, in our human minds, can't see past the fact of this loss. And so it's just like the way we respond is of anger and spite, and we just completely turn from the Lord. Or we can hear those things and respond to them. Like, I don't know that many of us could respond the way Job did, but Job responded by saying, you know, the Lord gave me nothing. As I came in, I had nothing. As I leave, I'm going to have nothing. The Lord gave me these things, and he can take them away, because that's the Lord's doing, not me. And so in all of this, again, Job did not sin. So in chapter 2, though, if you want to turn the page and follow along, if not, it's on the screen. Sorry, I should have told you that earlier. It's probably little, but we got TVs that we're going to change those with. But we figured out the mountains are wrong, so we're going to continue to change those next week. So in verse 7 it says, so Satan left the Lord's presence. So again, Satan came to the Lord, and he said, can I do some more? And he put painful sores on Job's body, from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. And so Job took a piece of broken pottery to scrape himself, and he sat in ashes and misery. And then verse 9, Job's wife said to him, why are you trying to stay innocent? Sorry, I couldn't read this right earlier. Why are you trying to stay innocent? Curse God and die. Job answered, you are talking like a foolish woman. Should we take only good things from God and not trouble? In spite of all of this, Job did not sin in what he said. So Job continues to show, while even his wife tells him to curse God and then die, Job basically rebuked her and continued to respond in the way that he did before by praising God, right? And so, I guess, just in my stance of reading this, like, my wife is like my best friend, right? You marry somebody because they're your best friend. And they're somebody that tolerates you no matter how goofy, silly, mean, whatever you are to them. And they're your best friend for the rest of your life. They don't have a choice. Because you said, yeah, I do, and they said it too. But Job's wife, Job's best friend, like, said, why are you trying to be innocent? Curse
She's
God.
basically saying it's your fault. Just go ahead and tell God it's your fault. You did something wrong and just die and be done with it.
Yeah.
And I think, like, sometimes we think that whenever something bad happens or something's taken away, we're like, what did we do for this to happen? Like, I think a lot of times that's a common thing. Like, did we do something really bad? Like, this is our consequence. And maybe sometimes, but I just want to say, too, and going back to the point before this, that, like, nothing happens to you that is not first filtered through the hand of God. Nothing happens to you that he doesn't know about. Nothing takes him by surprise. Right? Like, he has our best in mind, and while things happen to us that are hard, and while we experience loss and we suffer in our life sometimes, because the Bible even calls us to suffer for the name of the Lord, so it doesn't promise us that it'll be easy, but nothing happens to us that he doesn't already know about, and that he doesn't know the end result, or know how we will respond, or know the good that is going to come out of it, because we'll talk about later some good things that have come out of us losing two babies. Like, we are able to relate to people who have had that happen to them and minister to people that we would not have been able to had we not walked through this. And that's why God gives us all different stories.
Yeah.
I say all the time, like, how boring would it be if we all had the exact same story, and we all looked the exact same, and we all walked through the same stuff? Like, that's so boring. We would be walking around like robots. But God gives us different stories and allows us to go through things that are hard, or just through different things and have different experiences, so that we can relate to others who have that experience. Because Frank and I can relate to people that y'all might not be able to relate to, and then you can go to school and relate to people around you that we have no idea what that feels like or what that might look like. And so the Lord does that, and that's like a sweet thing, that we can have that empathy and know how to minister to other people and share God with them in those times that other people may not. So I just wanted to say that too, because I think sometimes we're like, oh, like, God didn't, like, why would he do this to me, or he didn't know this was going to happen, but none of that takes him by surprise. And so we're responsible for how we respond to a situation, and we would hope and pray that we would respond with, like, praising him, but we don't always do that, because I was upset for sure and really questioned a lot, and even doubted some things at times. So I don't want it to come off like we were just like Job, you know, like, and even Job, like, you will see in a few minutes, questioned and dug deep with stuff. And so no one's perfect in how they respond, but
Yeah.
anyways, sorry.
I can at least talk about how I responded, maybe a little bit how I saw Becklin respond. But for me, like, I responded out of anger, and like I was telling you, like, I'm just questioning, Lord, like, just constantly, why? Do you even know what you're doing, God? Like, what's up? Like, I don't get it. And it took me a couple weeks and, like, plenty of alone time with God to just sit there and, like, listen. And I think that's a big thing too. When you ask God questions, when you even accuse God of things and ask him why, if you don't give him time to respond or even listen to him, then you're not going to have an answer, because you didn't listen to it. And even at that, God may not ever give you an answer. So anyway, but I reacted out of anger and probably even, like, quick to anger. And Becklin responded in a way that I wish I would have responded more like, right? And so,
Can I just say this real quick?
Yeah.
I was walking around Lifeway one day, like when I was going through this, and I saw this book, and no offense to Izzy, it has butterflies on the cover, but I just don't really love butterflies. So I was not even drawn to the cover, but I literally just randomly picked this up, and it was like, wait and see, finding peace and God's pauses and plans. And I was like, that one looks good, threw it in my little basket. And this book truly, like, it's by a writer named Wendy Pope, and she is with Proverbs 31 Ministry. But just really like walks through like times of waiting and things when you're not sure it's going to happen, and walked with like Daniel through different things in Psalms that he was like waiting for and going through in different battles. And so this really helped me and guided me in meeting with the Lord and trying to see that there are purposes in God's pauses and that he has a plan for you. And so that really kind of helped me too, and it was just such a God thing that I just like randomly picked that up, and that it just made such a big difference in my life. And you get to write the last chapter, and not that the Lord will always do this, but it was really cool because right as I finished the book is when I found out that I was pregnant with Rigsby. And so it was really cool because the last chapter is just open for you to fill in and for you to write. And we may not always have the ending yet, but it was just cool that the Lord's timing is so perfect and that he is sovereign in that. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Deviation.
No, but I thought Becklin responded in a way that I wish I could have, where it's hard to say, but she bypassed me, right? Like, instead of leaning on each other in that time, and that's how, whatever you want to say about it, like, that's what you would want to do in your marriage or whatever. But honestly, she bypassed me because she knew that ultimately I wasn't going to fulfill this God-sized hole in her heart, right? She knew that only God could fulfill this answer that she was trying to ask. And so she ran to God, and I could see that. And I kind of got offended at first, like, the first little bit I realized it, and then I was like, ultimately, like, I'm so glad she's going to God, because I don't know that I can't answer that question for her as to why this happened to us. And so I could see where every day she was way up earlier than me, like I don't wake up at 4, and she was constantly waking up at 4 and constantly running to God. And like next thing I know, Bible verses popped up all over my bathroom, and now all over my room, and I'm like, okay, like Bible verses are everywhere. What's going on? My walls are almost covered with them. Like what's going on? But truly, like these are words and like verses that God is giving to her and encouraging her. And so God's using scripture that He's written, years ago, thousands of years ago, to speak to my wife in a time that happened to her right now. And so when you have questions, God isn't necessarily going to audibly speak to you, but He can speak to you through scripture, right? He can speak to you through other people. Sorry, 1 second. And so that's the way that we responded. It's not necessarily good or bad, probably more bad than her, but Job did respond in a way too, right? And so I'm going to read chapter 3. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to skip through pieces. But after 7 days, Job cried out. So it took 7 days, and Job was like, okay, I'm about to go nuts. I have to cry out. And so he says, I curse the day that I've been born, saying, let the day I was born be destroyed, and let the night it was said, a boy was born, let that day turn to darkness. Don't let God care about it. Don't let light shine on it. Let the darkness gloom of that day. Like he's just cursing that day. I'm going to skip a whole bunch. In verse 11, he says, why didn't I die as soon as I was born? So that's a why question. Why didn't I die when I came out of the womb? Why did my mother conceive me? Why was I not buried like a child born dead? Like a baby who never saw the light of day? Like he's just wishing over and over and over that he had never even lived, right? So why was life given to those in misery? Why is life given to those who are so unhappy? Like he's doing the same thing that I did in a sense. I'm not saying I'm like Job. I'm not saying I said the same thing. But it's come down to the wire, and Job's like, why was I even born? I don't even want to live through this. I want to be done. Like, he's very depressed, going through a whole lot of it. And God invites us, might I just say, God invites us to wrestle with him and ask him questions, right? And so in all of this, while it seems like Job is being a bad Christian or a bad believer, it may seem like I was being a bad believer by asking questions like that. But kind of like what Austin French said in the beginning of that video that we watched like 2 weeks ago, I think now. My weeks are scrambling up. But he even said, I have a child, right? And I have this little boy, and this little boy asks me questions. And he asks me why questions all day long, and I can just wait for that because I'm going to get nuts. But he says, I love it, and I enjoy it. And he says, I oftentimes think that asking why makes me a bad Christian, but really asking why makes me a good child. And God is his heavenly Father, right? And so it's true. If we are children of God, and just like which we don't have children, but just like children ask their parents why all the time, it doesn't make us bad Christians to ask why. It makes us good children of God. And that's okay. And God invites us to wrestle with that.
And there's not any question too small or too annoying or too
Yeah, we
big or
can't avoid God.
anything, like he wants, like I think we said this 2 weeks ago, like he so desires a relationship with us that he like wants us to ask him those like nitty gritty questions or those hard questions and to wrestle with that. Like I just picture Job like crying and like laid out on the floor and like asking why this and why that and like really, really wrestling and grappling with those hard questions and just being like, why did you even like allow me to live, Lord? Like if all this was gonna get taken from me, I should have just never been born, basically. And so he really, really struggled with that. But as we see like from scripture, at the end of the day, he still blessed the name of the Lord and did not curse God. So
Yeah, and I'll skip to chapter 10. You can read it on here. It's verse 1 through 5. He even says, I hate my life, and so I will complain without holding back. I will speak because I'm so unhappy. I will say to God, do not hold me guilty, but tell me what you have against me. Does it not make you happy to trouble me? That seems very familiar to me. Does it make you happy to make me suffer? Right? Verse 3, does it make you happy to trouble me? Don't you care about me? I feel like that's a question we ask. Is this the work of your hands? Are you happy with the plans of evil people? Do you have human eyes that see what we see? Are your days like the days of humans and your years like our years? Right? And so he's grappling right now, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can feel it, like, just because I've been through a why question. And I can probably guess that you have as well. Right? And so I just think back to that time of anger that you felt, of that time where you were literally asking, like, this is raw. Like, I just want you to understand, I want you to connect this, right? You're probably reading it and going, wow, Job's just being a bad Christian, and I don't really understand, like, he's just feeling this kind of way. But really, like, truly think back to those emotions that you had in that time of asking God why so-and-so died, or why so-and-so got sick, or why any of this, right? Whatever specifically God has taught you through or used to work through your life. Why did my parents get divorced? It's a really easy one. It's very easy to be angry about that as well. And you just ask why. Like Job says, I hate my life, and so I will complain because I'm not holding back. I'll speak because I'm very unhappy. Like he's telling the Lord, I'm unhappy, right? So Job continues to question God, and he continues to wrestle with him. And even I would even say that he's slumping into a depression, right? And so for me, this word depression is kind of new. It's kind of a new 2000s kind of thing. When I was growing up, it was like, oh yeah, you're sad, like whatever. And I had a friend that was like diagnosed depressed. I'm like, dude, you're just sad, like whatever. Just get over it. Like it doesn't make sense to me why all this. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned in that sense, but I feel like even the older generations, like we're all like, you're sad, like work through it. Like I understand it's a thing, but I don't really know where the depression or the anxiety words came from. It's kind of this new thing for me at least. But I do know that they're real, and I do know that these are things that the devil is using. Depression is a deep sadness, like they're equal, it's the same thing. Anxiety is worry and fear that you're not handing over to the Lord, and you're constantly dwelling on it, and you can't sleep. It's a side rabbit trail, but they're real, and I know they happen. But what I'm saying is God allows these things for us to wrestle through them, and to point us towards Him, and to teach us through something. And so I'll skip to chapter 12 because we're still reading about how Job responded. And so in chapter 12, backstory again, sorry. Between chapters 2 and 3 and 10, Job is talking back and forth with his friends, and his friends are supporting him and loving him, and they're like, dude, lean on God. Like, God is doing this for a reason. It's okay. Work through it. Let's go. And he's got 3 friends, and one responds, and Job responds, and then the other responds, and then Job responds. So that's where these chapters are coming. And so he says, and now after a little bit, his friends are starting to say, this is getting a little deep for me. You know, I truly think you've done something wrong, or even God's just doing this because He wants to punish you. Like, there's no reason that God is doing this. I think you should just give up. Like, even his friends that were supporting him and were saying that God was using this are now starting to turn their backs on him and even God in a sense. And he says, my friends all laugh at me. This is the beginning of chapter 12 in verse 4. My friends all laugh at me when I call on God and expect Him to answer me. They laugh at me even though I'm not right and innocent, or though I am right and innocent. Those who are comfortable don't care that others have trouble, and they think it right that those people should have troubles. The tents of robbers are not bothered, and those who make God angry are safe. And and their God is in their pockets, right? And so Job, in a sense, let me just read into this a little bit. Job is saying their God is small and not real, and their God is in their pocket, right? And he's saying, but the tents of robbers are not bothered, right? Robbers are getting away with robbing. And those people that are making God angry aren't getting punished for it. But me, this guy who loves God, and I'm doing the thing that's right, and I'm following, Jesus, and well, it wasn't Jesus at the time, but I'm following God, I'm doing what he's asking me to do. And my friends are laughing at me, and they're mocking me and making fun of me. And I'm the one that lost all my camels, all my goats, all my sheep, all wolves and goats, it was donkeys and oxen and sheep, and most of my servants and all my family besides my wife. My wife is now turned on me, my friends are now turning on me. I've got boils, I'm sick. Like, I don't understand. Like, why am I the good guy, but I'm getting punished? And why are the bad guys getting away with it? Isn't that a very easy question to ask?
Yes.
Very easy, in the moment especially.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Why are they getting away with speeding and I get the ticket? Any like that. But it shows us the important,
Yeah, no, and it's just him talking with his friends, like it goes on for chapters, y'all, and if you've ever studied Job, like, it's very interesting, with his friends. But shameless plug here for the importance of just community and having people that you can talk to and kind of, I keep saying the word grapple, that's just in my head today, like wrestle through and grapple through things with. And so important too that y'all like come to church and be with people here who are like-minded, who want to wrestle through those things with you, who want to live life and do life with you, who you're leaders, who put so much time and serve y'all like so many times a week, and they don't get paid anything for this. I don't know if y'all know that. Like, we don't pay them under the table. Like, they have lots of jewels in their crowns in heaven, but here on earth, like, they don't, y'all. They love y'all so much. They come in here and serve you, and so they want to do life with you and wrestle through these questions, and that is just so sweet that they want to do that. And so we want you to come and feel safe here and feel like this is a place where you can do that and you can just talk about your issues, and that we can work through that and pray through that with you and encourage you in that. So shameless plug for the importance of community, but it really is so hard when you don't have people to talk to about that. Like, it can feel so lonely, and I think that's where some of those feelings of like sadness and feeling alone can come through when you don't have someone that you can talk to. And yes, we want to talk to the Lord, but sometimes, let's just be honest, it's nice to have someone you can like see like in real life and like touch, and just be like, I just need you to listen to me, and someone who can just like talk back to you or say like, yes, I'm praying for you. I think a lot of times we don't want to talk to the Lord because we don't audibly hear him, and I think he can do that, but a lot of times we hear from his word and in prayer and then the whispers in our heart. So I think that's why sometimes it's hard to not want to talk to God, because you're like, well, I can't see him and he can't talk right back to me and I can't text him and all that stuff. And so it is nice though to have community and people that you can come, and people who like your leaders who have gone through things similar to you and can really say like, hey, you're gonna get through that. There's an end to that. There's a light at the end of that tunnel, and you can make it. So anyway, sorry, tangent, but that's important.
No, that's why we have small groups on Sunday. And I know they aren't necessarily the way you might think of a small group, but it's a small group. Do you not understand that those leaders take time to teach you those things through the week? And like I said before, I think it was Sunday even, I said like they won't care two licks if you decide, hey, you want to bring up the fact that so and so, like my parents are getting divorced. I'm totally making this up. I don't know anybody. My parents are getting divorced, and I really just don't understand like what's going on and why. And I think every single one of them would sit there and say, okay, like, do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to talk about that later? And if you said now, they would sit there and they would do their best to walk with you through that, to talk with you through that. Also, you have other kids that are exactly like you. I'm just saying, look on your left and look on your right. If there's nobody on that side, that's okay. Look across the aisle. But what I am saying is you're probably sitting next to somebody you like. The reason I say that is because you're sitting next to them. This is somebody that you consider a friend, somebody close enough that you are sitting next to at church. So, in my opinion, right, if you're going through something, at the very least, you have other Christians in this room, other family members, as I would like to call them, in this room who are willing to walk with you through that. And if not, I'm sure they will, even if they're not your best friend, right? I think you could look across I would hope that you could look across the room, and it doesn't matter if you know each other well or you don't know each other well, but I would hope that you would love each other enough in God, in Christ, as a family, as a church family, that you would be willing to help walk through somebody else with that. And if not, then I'll talk to you about that later. But
Well, Frank, can I say something?
yeah,
I mean, I think you guys would be surprised if you did open up to each other in ways that you don't normally, especially, cause you know, like, me and Miss Jane are tight. And I'm talking to Miss Jane, Miss Jane and I text each other, whatever, but what if one Sunday I just came in and unloaded on somebody else besides Miss Jen? There's nothing wrong with that, and that somebody else might actually say, oh my gosh, I have been waiting for somebody to ask me that question, or I have been waiting for someone to say that they're going through the exact same thing I'm going through, and I had no idea, I thought I was the only one. I mean, you guys will be surprised, cause, I mean, let's just be real, we can come up in here with our church face on every Sunday, every Wednesday, right? Been there, done it.
Yep.
Been there, done it. And we don't know, but there is somebody going through exactly what you're going through right now, and they can help you, and you can help them, whether it's at the same time or after.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just I think with so many times we get afraid to say that we're going through something we don't understand.
Right.
or that somebody else doesn't.
That's just Satan trying to keep us from being real with ourselves and being real with the Lord and helping each other through it.
Yeah. If you isolate, if something's going on in your life and you isolate yourself, so I can look back in my life, especially in high school, see me going through things, wrestling with God through things, and I isolate myself, and it just gets way worse. Like, that's just been times where I just go into this weird, like, deep slump, and it's just like, I don't care, there ain't nobody around here to make me care, that kind of thing. And so when you isolate yourself, just to be completely honest with you, you're exactly where the devil wants you to be. And if I say that, and you sit there and roll your eyes and say, like, it's not me, I don't care, or I don't care what's going on, I might venture to say, like, you might be isolated, or trying to isolate yourself. So let me finish this really quick. In chapter 42, we're reading the end result of Job. We've skipped a whole lot. We could preach
The
a
rest
whole
of
lot.
devotions this week, I read chapters
Yeah,
11 through 41.
Job.
See y'all Sunday, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Homework.
So I'm going to read in verse 10 of chapter 42. And so it says, after Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord gave him success again. The Lord gave Job twice as much as he had owned before. Job's brothers and sisters came to his house, along with everyone who had known him before, and they all ate with him there. They comforted him and made him feel better about the trouble the Lord had brought on him. And each one gave Job a piece of silver and a gold ring. The Lord blessed the last part of Job's life even more than the first part. Job had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 teams of oxen, 1,000 female donkeys. Job also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He named his first daughter Jemima. His second daughter Keziah, and his third daughter Karen Hapooch. Forgive me for how I
This is what we're naming our next.
Okay. There were no other women in all the land as beautiful as Job's daughter, or as his daughters, and their father gave them land to own along with their brothers. After this, Job lived 140 years. He lived to see his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, and then Job died. He was old and had lived many years. Right? And so specifically, might we just reverse here really quick? Job didn't ask for any of these things back, but God gave him more than what he had in the first place, because God was using those things that he'd suffered through and then rewarded him for the way he reacted, right? And so it's our job, the way we respond isn't out of anger or out of frustration, it's out of love and understand that God is going to use this through, or God is going to use something through this to teach us one, but also he could very well use this to help somebody else, right? And so, again, every story doesn't have a good ending like this, right? And so our story does, praise the Lord. Like, we lost 2 children. That's still bad. I still don't really have all the answers that I want from that. But what I will say is God also gave us Rick, and we're like, it just gives us more love for her. We're just like thankful even more for her. I'm not crying. I've been sick this week and my throat's dry. But I want to say this before I go switch on the thing while you finish. What was I gonna say? Yep, I forgot it in my coughs.
Just that the Lord rewards us not always in materialistic
Yeah.
things or in the restoration of a relationship or in like 140 years of living. God, I hope not.
The way I've seen God
Yeah.
God redeem these situations specifically hasn't necessarily been in ways through me, right? And so God, I haven't had anybody ask me questions about like losing children or anything like that. But what I have seen is for me specifically, all my answers haven't been all my questions haven't been answered. I still feel like I don't fully understand why God would take my child from me. That I was like, dude, I'm willing to give this child to you and like teach her about you, or him or her, I don't know what it was, and love them well. And I desired that, and we desired that. But I did see where God used Becklin and other women to ask her questions. So like totally randomly, two girls have asked her, like, so Becklin has shared her story on Facebook one time, but through that, she had somebody that I honestly would have never thought of that would actually reach out to her, and they were like, hey, I think I'm having this, and they're boo-hooing, and I'm listening on the phone while we're driving. And it was really sad. And like, when people responded to us when we were going through that, it was like, oh, you're young. Like, even the doctor said, you're young, you'll have another one. Like, not a big deal. But for us, it's like, that's a life, right? And you're just saying like, oh, well, like, that's annoying. And so with that, we've understood that there's not really a correct answer to answer any of that, right? You can't say, oh, it's okay, or oh, that's gonna be all right. It's just whatever. Like the response to that is just to listen. And sometimes this is what you need to do when people are going through things. It's just to listen and say, I'm here for you. I love you. I'm gonna sit with you and pray for you through this. And it's not necessarily a direct answer to fix all, because we don't have that on this side of heaven. And then even another girl asked her, what's going on, like this, that, boo-hoo and all that. And like, I just love to see the Lord redeem those situations specifically with the allowing us the knowledge to know how to respond to other women going through that. Because even for me, I didn't understand how common it was for a lot of women, just going through all of that. And so there's a lot of people suffering. There's a lot of people with parents who are getting divorced. Like, obviously, I bet you out of your friend group, you can look around and see at least one or two that have parents that are divorced, maybe even multiple times, right? And so, what happens if God's using you to work through and to help that person through that situation? He can finish my story.
No, that's really good. Frank's gonna play a quick song. We heard this today, and it really just kind of wraps all of this up in a really good message. And there's a spoken word in it, I guess we'll call it, by John Piper in this song. I want y'all to really listen close to the words, and then y'all will be free to go as soon as this is over. But this is just kind of a really good wrap up of all that we've been talking about tonight.
Are you looking for a source of honest and traditional journalism? Well, take a look at this. While the Chinese Communist